Welcome! In this session I would like to explain to you how to work with HTML using Windows PowerShell. Before I start, I need to make sure you have a full understanding of variables, aliases, and working with the pipeline. If you are unsure or you would like to refresh your memory, please view one of my earlier sessions. If we would like to read the content of a HTML file, we can use the getContent commandlet to do so. We need to specify the path to the file that we would like to read, and the content will be displayed on the PowerShell console. To open an HTML file in a browser from the PowerShell command line, we can either use the Invoke-Expression commandlet and specify the path to the HTML file in the command parameter, or we can use the Invoke-Item commandlet and specify the path to the file in the path parameter. If we would like to open a web page from the internet, we can use the start process commandlet to do so. We need to specify the URL of the web page in the file path parameter. If we would like to open a web page with Edge, we can use the start process commandlet, specify Microsoft.Edge with a colon and the URL to the website. If we would like to use a different browser, we can specify the path to the browser, the colon, and the URL. Or we can type System.Diagnostics.Process in a square bracket with a colon, start, then the executable name of the browser, a comma, and the URL of the website that we would like to open. The easiest way to create a HTML page from an object is to convert it to HTML. We can do so by using the ConvertTo-Html commandlet. We need to specify the object that we would like to turn into an HTML in the input object parameter. In the head parameter, we can add any style information, JavaScript, or anything else that we would like to put into the header of the HTML. We can specify a page title for the HTML page in the title parameter. We can put any body information into the body parameter. If we would like to use a CSS file to style our HTML, we can add the location of the CSS file in the CSS URI parameter. If we would like to filter the object to only include certain parameters of a specific object, we can use the property parameter. If we would like to create the HTML in list format, we can specify this in the as parameter. If we don't use the as parameter, the object will be converted as a table. In the pre-content parameter, we can add information that should be added to the top of the HTML page. This is normally information that is not part of the object that we are converting. In the post-content parameter, we can add information that should be appended to the end of the HTML file. If we use the fragment parameter switch, the object will be converted only to a table without any other HTML formats like HTML, header, or body components. We can convert the object to an HTML with either specifying the object in the input object parameter, or we can pipe an object or a commandlet to the ConvertTo-Html commandlet. To write information that we have converted to a file, we can use the setContent commandlet with the HTML information in the value parameter, and the path parameter, we need to specify the location to where we would like to write the file to. We could also use the pipeline to pipe the information to the out file commandlet and add the file path information where the file should be created. Or we can use the greater than character to specify the path where we would like to save the file. To get content from a web page on the internet, we can use the Invoke-WebRequest commandlet. Once we have created an object from this commandlet, we can use the content property to read the information from the website. If we use the elements property, PowerShell will create an object from every element that is on the web page. If we use the phrased HTML property, we can get a specific element from the web page. In the base response property, we can see information on the response, like, for example, if the request was using a GET or a POST method. If we specify forms property, any forms that are on the web page will be displayed as objects. The headers property will display the headers of the HTML page. The images property will display all the image information from all the images on the web page. The inputs field property will display the input fields on the web page. The links property displays the links that were found on the web page. Raw content displays the raw HTML content of the website. The raw content length property displays the character length of the raw HTML content. The raw content stream displays informations like if the web page can read, can seek, or can timeout. The scripts property displays scripts embedded in the web page. The status code of the web request is displayed in the status code property. And its description is displayed in the status description property. Here is an example on how to use the Invoke-WebRequest. First, we need to create an object variable from the web request. Then we can use the content property of this variable to display the content of the web page. And we can use the AllElements property to display the HTML as object elements. Okay, let's wrap this up with a couple of examples in PowerShell ISE. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is set up a couple of variables. We will set a variable to the location of the HTML file that we're going to write to. We will set the location of a CSS file. This is a file that I've created already. And we will set the location to my IIS server. It's running on the local machine. And to the CSS file on that IIS server and the HTML file. All right, up next I will demonstrate to you how to convert to HTML. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create an object. We're going to use the new object commandlet to do that. The type name is going to be a PS object. And as properties, we are going to specify the job title, the department, and the name. All right, just to show you what I've actually done is I'll execute that object. And you can see I have an object with the department as a property, the name, job title, and the name, and the values to that. Okay, up next, we're going to create a style sheet, and we are going to just store that in a variable. If you are familiar with CSS, we are going to create a style for the body, for the table header, and the table division. And I'm also adding a title. All right. Now to to convert to HTML, we are going to use the ConvertTo-Html commandlet. Our input object will be the object that we've created, and as a head, we will use our style. So if I execute this, I will just show you what it looks like. If I execute the HTML, you will see that we have an HTML page that has been created. Okay, to write this to file, we can use the setContent commandlet. As the value, we will specify our HTML, and as the path, we will specify the path to the file that we would like to write to. Okay, if we would like to open that file, we can use Invoke-Expression, and as a command, we will specify the location of that file. So if I execute that, it will open our default browser and show us what we have actually done. Okay, up next I will show you how to convert to HTML using a CSS file. To do that, I'm again going to create a variable for my HTML. We will use the ConvertTo-Html. Input object is going to be the object, and then we're going to specify the CSS URI with the location to the CSS file. And this time we're going to choose the title and add our title to that as well. If I execute this, and oh yeah, I will actually be using Invoke-Item. This is just another way of opening files to open the HTML file. There we go. I've just changed the color that we can see that it's a different way of setting up or converting to HTML. Okay, up next I will show you how to use the out file and the pipeline to achieve the same thing. This time we are going to use the get service commandlet. We are going to get all the services that start with a B. We are selecting the objects or selecting the service name and the status, and we're converting to HTML using our CSS file and then using the out file commandlet to write that file to disk. I'm also using an alias for II, stands for Invoke-Item. Just gives you less typing. There we go. We have a table that's been created using the CSS file and the out file to write it to disk. Another way to write to disk is use the greater than character. So again, I'm doing the same. I'm just using aliases, getting all the services that start with a B. This time I'm selecting service name, the status, and the status type. I'm using my CSS file and then just the greater as and the file name that we would like to write to. There we go. Okay, up next I will demonstrate to you how we can get rid of this select object pipeline, and instead we are going to use the property. So this time we're going to get or use the get event log to get the logs. We're going to get logs for Windows PowerShell. We are just going to get the 10 newest items that have been written. Then we're going to convert HTML. We are filtering to index and entry type. We are adding a title. The title is going to be Windows Service at localhost. We are using a CSS file. We are writing the current date and time into the body. We are specifying a string as a pre-content, and as a post-content we are also specifying a string. And then we are going to use the greater sign to write that HTML to disk. There you go. This is our body, the date and time. This is our pre-content. Then we have our object written as an HTML using the CSS file, and at the bottom we have the post content. Okay, up next I will show you what the fragment parameter does from the convert to HTML. If I open my HTML file, you will see that we have an HTML tag and we have an HTML body tag and all the other information. Now, if we use the fragment, this will only create a table. So as you can see, we don't have the HTML tags anymore. The only thing that's been written is a table. So if you don't need the full HTML, you can use the fragment to just write to a table. Okay, up next I'll show you how to use the as to convert the HTML to a list. Again, we're going to get the services starting with B. We will convert that to a list, and we are filtering to service name, status, and start type. There we go. This is a list format using ConvertTo-Html. Okay, up next I will show you how to manipulate the CSS using classes. If I execute or get the information for the HTML file, you will notice that our TDs do not have a class. And this is also not, if you are using ConvertTo-Html, you will not be able to get a class into that. So what we're going to do is we're going to manipulate our HTML file and write class information to that. Okay, so I will create a variable with all the services starting with B. I'm going to get my service name, my status, and my start type. I will convert that using our CSS file. Once I've done that, I will replace the text in that HTML, and I'm going to take anything called TD or table division running, and I'm changing that to table division class, and the class will be called run. And I'll do the same with the stopped. It'll be a class called stopped. So if I just get my information from my CSS file, you will see that I have created classes for the table divisions. I have a table division called run that is supposed to be color green, and the table division stop is going to be color red. And for my auto, it will be the bold text, and for my manual, it will be italic text. Okay, so I will just replace the text in that file. Once I have replaced the text, we are going to write that to the file. And this time I am opening the file on my IIS server just to demonstrate to you how to open a file from the internet. There we go. So as you can see, I have changed the color of my table divisions, and you can do that after you have converted the file to a HTML. Okay, up next I'll show you how to get information from the internet. We are going to use the Invoke-WebRequest to do so. So we are going to specify our URI. This is the URL to the web location. Now that we have the content, request, we can actually look at the content of the file by specifying the content property. So this is exactly the same if we would read the file from disk. Then we can convert it or look at all the elements. This will create an object from each, like the table will have an object, the table division, table rows, and so on. So if I execute that, you can see that it actually creates an object for each one of these items, like the inner HTML, and shows us what the items are. If we get the raw length property, it'll tell us how many characters this HTML has. If we get the status 200. And what does that status mean? If we run the description, it means that it's okay. So the web request was okay. Now, another property that you can use is the parsed HTML. And within that, we can run more properties like getting the body. So if I run this, we can also see the information of our body. Using the get elements by tag name, we can specify which element we would like to look at. If we look at the table rows, I will just execute that. It will just show the text for our table rows. And to go even further, we are going to look at the elements by table row, and we are filtering to only show us the stopped information. And then just to make it look more nicer, we are just replacing the text because it'll just show us a stopped manual, and we're just replacing it just to look a bit nicer. So if I execute that, we can see which services are stopped. Okay, another way to use the parsed HTML is by cell index. So if I execute this, I will show you what sort of indexes there are. And you can see each table division has an index. So the first information is indexed at 0, the second information is indexed at 1, and the third information is indexed as 2. Those are the table divisions that we have. So if we just want to get all the table divisions that are indexed with 1, we use our property parsed HTML. Then we get the element by tag name. We just specify the table division. Then we filter to show only the cell indexes that are equal to 1, and then just look at the inner text. So if I execute that, it will only show stopped, running, and stopped. Okay, up next I will show you how to get the class or filter by class name. Again, we are using our property parsed HTML. We are getting our elements by table division, and we would just like to see the class name. All right, there we go. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the session, and I'm looking forward to our next one.